Hey friends, it's Jenna, Dog Liaison Training, and today we are talking about 6 secrets to getting a puppy. There are a lot of YouTube videos on potty training, on puppy nipping, on crate training. There are a lot of YouTube videos on a lot of puppy things, but there are 6 secrets that I don't see perpetuated very frequently on the internet, and we're going to cover those today. The first secret that I think is probably the most important lesson is that you do not need to teach your dog obedience right off the bat. Absolutely, the sits and the downs and the stays and the recall, all of those are very useful skills, and at some point your dog is going to need to learn them, probably. But the reality is that you can teach any dog to sit at any age as long as there's not some sort of physical infringement. They will be able to learn sit. Okay. Um, However, in a puppy's early development, you only get 18 weeks to set that personality the way you want it to look. The first 18 weeks of a dog's life are the most critical in their emotional, mental, and physical development. So we want to be exposing them to different ideas and thought processes in those first 18 weeks. And those are going to be far more important than if a dog can sit stay for 3 minutes. Okay? So, what do I mean? If you're going to teach sit, you want to make sure you're doing it through a shaping method or a capturing method so that you're teaching actually critical thinking and ingenuity where the dog is offering you the behaviors on his own without you having to lure it with a treat or to pat their butts or any sort of extra unnecessary stuff. Okay, giving them the opportunity to think on their own, to offer to volunteer behaviors on their own is going to give them opportunities to think creatively and think logically instead of emotionally. And it's going to give them the opportunity to be willing participants in the learning. The 12 to 14 week range of a puppy's life is when they're most excited to learn. It's when they're most involved. They are like sponges, so they just absorb information very easily. And you want to use those 12 to 14 weeks in order to get them exposed to different elements, get them exposed to different strange sounds, strange colors. Absolutely, dogs can see in a variety of colors. So getting them exposed to fire hydrants, which have that bright yellow, or getting them exposed to a Prius, right? Because Priuses have that high-pitched noise. Giving them opportunities to be exposed to these very unique things at an early development is going to be far more important than keeping the dog locked up inside and teaching the dog to sit for every little thing. Which leads me into my next secret, which I think is probably the most important, which is that absolutely you should be taking your puppy outside of the house. The idea that we need to keep them locked up until they have their rabies vaccines is quite frankly very archaic, and it has been debunked by a lot of research. The Association of Veterinary Medical Associates came out in 2009. I'm sorry, it was 2008? 2009 or 2008, saying that this wasn't necessary, that we absolutely should be getting the dogs out of the house in those critical early weeks before the rabies vaccine even. And the reality is I have another video on vaccines, but giving them, once they've had their Bordetella and their Parvo at the very minimum, their second round at around 12 weeks or so, that by that point this likelihood of them catching any sort of disease is very minimal, and it's actually a higher risk not to get them outside of the house and exposed to these new things. So please take your puppy out. Please do not keep them inside the home and you will miss all of those very critical learning stages. The third thing that no one tells you about puppies is when they are meeting someone, it's very common for them to jump on someone, for them to get excited. And picking them up off the ground is just perpetuating their jumping. So what that means is every single time you pick up your puppy, this is particularly true for larger breeds, If you pick them up and you hold them in your arms and you're cradling them and you're giving all the reinforcement up in your face, you are giving them a lot to enjoy and a lot of reinforcement history of being high off the ground. So of course it makes sense that they're going to want to jump on you in the future. So if you do not want your 75-pound chocolate lab jumping on you when they are 8 months old, don't be picking them up off the ground at 14 weeks because you are just setting yourself up for failure. The best way to not have a jumper is to not let them jump in the first place, to prevent it from happening in the first place. And the best way to prevent that from happening is to not pick your puppy off the ground. Please do not do that, okay? And to be honest, don't let strangers do it either, because that's just perpetuating letting them jump on people. If you don't want them crawling up in, your niece's lap when they're 85 pounds, because at 85 pounds, he's going to be knocking your, 7-year-old niece over, don't let him do it at 14 weeks, okay? It's going to have a hard time understanding why it was okay to do it when he was 14 weeks old, but he's no longer allowed to do it when he's 6 months old, 7 months old. He's not going to understand that difference. So you must be setting him up for sustainability. You must be setting him up for what will be allowed and expected of him when he's larger. I mean, this is true for smaller puppies and smaller breeds as well. So those are things to be mindful of. One of the things that a lot of people are concerned about when they first get a puppy is leaving them at home alone. I think some of my most committed clients tend to take the 4 weeks off after they get a puppy, and they spend the entire 4 weeks 24/7 with the puppy at home. Which, it's true that if you've got a younger puppy, you need to be able to have more time on your hands to give it to them, to dedicate to them, because they just take more time up than an adult dog. But please do not stay with them 24/7. This goes back to setting up for practical day-to-day life. If you do not plan on being with your puppy for 24/7 for the next 15 years, they need to have opportunities to be entertained by themselves. And so giving them a PlayStation like a crate or an X-Pen, or even if you've got a backyard that's incredibly puppy-proofed, okay, even if you've got a backyard, sometimes that can be okay to leave them there too. Setting up those opportunities for them to be independent. Give them an activity to do while they're there. Don't just kind of be like, good luck, peace out. You want to make sure that they either have activity or that they're in need of rest, like they've already had so much activity that they're likely to fall asleep. Those are really important. Those moments are really important. We want to make sure that we are setting them up for success. And even if you have a phone call today at 2 and you're like, I cannot be worried about what my puppy's doing, or if you've just got house chores and you have to do those dishes and you're not going to be able to do the dishes and manage puppy, it's okay to put puppy in his crate and hopefully either A, he's falling asleep, or B, he has some sort of low management activity, like he's chewing on a Kong with peanut butter or something. The key is just to make sure that you are strategizing for that you're preparing for that. It's not just that he's in the crate, for 20 hours a day and, then you come home and he's out for the other 4. You want to make sure that you're preparing him for that, let's say it's an hour or 45 minutes or whatever, that he's going to have to entertain himself in the crate, okay? So please, please don't be afraid to leave your puppy to his own devices for short periods of time. Just make sure that it's in a controlled environment, okay? The other thing that people don't tell you about potty training specifically is that dogs are going to find the location in the house that is not being used the most by them. So what this means is just like when we go to the restroom, we go into a very designated room that we really only go into that room to relieve ourselves. We're not just in there socializing and having a good time. Puppies are going to do the same thing. If your dining room table isn't very important to your puppy, if he never goes in there, he's going to pick that spot to relieve himself, because then he doesn't have to mess the areas up that he actually does entertain himself in. So he's going to go underneath your dining room table because he's not doing anything else there, and he doesn't want to tarnish his area that he is doing things in. So it's important that you know you either are A, blocking off unpopular parts of the house, so like places that he's not going to be spending a lot of time in are just blocked off and he can't have access there, or start to spend time in these other places. So if you know your puppy really likes to go underneath the coffee room, or I'm sorry, the dining room table, start to spend more time in the dining room where you're practicing maybe touch, or you're playing games, or you're feeding him in there. Start to make that area more meaningful to him so that he doesn't want to go to the restroom in there. And always remember that potty training is completely variable. I mean, some puppies can train in 3 days and they're like, cool, that was the easiest potty training exercise in the world. And then other times it's going to take 3 months. It will be highly dependent on how consistent you are, to be honest, and to be it'll be individualized to their physiological development as well. Okay. The final secret that no one ever tells you about having a puppy, it pertains to puppy teething. And that is that your skin is the perfect remedy to your puppy's pain. Remember that when they're teething, their gums are in pain, just like with babies, right? And teething can go all the way up into 8 months. So this isn't just something that they just get over as soon as they get out of the early puppy stages, right? Like before they get their rabies vaccines. This is something that continues on for several months. And so when they first start teething on your wrist or on your hand or on your skin, the irony of it is that because they're in pain, your skin is the perfect remedy to that pain. That is that it is tough enough that when they bite in it, it doesn't just completely break in pieces and shatter, right? Like they can bite pretty hard. But it's soft enough that it has a little bit of give, right? It has kind of that little bounce. So it's not so tough, like as hard of as a rock, but not so soft like a stuffed animal. So when your puppy starts doing teething on you, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I thought I loved you before, but now you, human, are relieving me of this pain that I couldn't find any other way to get rid of. So you are also a healer, that is, right? And that's just one more reason that they fall in love with us. So I'm not saying that we necessarily need to encourage them to teeth on us. We definitely need to give them alternative behaviors, alternative things to teeth on. We need to make sure that they're aware that bite inhibition isn't set up, things like that. We do need to be prepared for that. But when your puppy starts doing it, don't just think that they're just teething just to teeth and that they're biting you just to bite you. Be aware that you are literally curing them of pain. You are relieving them of pain. And that is always going to be the most reinforcing thing you can give a dog, is to take away a pain or physical ailment of some kind. So I hope that these 6 lessons were surprising to you, at least in some capacity, or that they gave you a new perspective. And that's always my objective in these videos, is to give you a new perspective of what you kind of sort of already knew, maybe intuitively knew, but now you have a concrete understanding of it. That's always my objective. I'll see you guys next video. Thanks so much.